Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm Mark Andreas. Welcome to Intro to Core Transformation. And often people ask, what is it that is unique about core transformation? With all these different personal change tools out there, what is it about core transformation that is really unique? And with core transformation, it allows us to start with some feeling, some behavior, some thought that's happening in our experience that we don't like. Maybe we want to get rid of it. We just wish it wasn't there, it wasn't happening. And whatever that limitation is, actually through the core transformation process becomes a doorway to a profound state of being that we call a core state that then transforms the initial limitation. So that's what's unique about core transformation, is that our limitations become doorways to these profound states of being that then transform the limitation. So what are some of the things that can be transformed with core transformation? I've got a handy flip chart here. Any true NLP training needs a flip chart, even if it's online. So let me get this in view here. So what can be transformed with this process? Core transformation can be used to transform any feeling, thought, or behavior. So that's a pretty wide range. And so this is one of the reasons why I've used this process the most in my client work, and also for my own personal growth and my own struggles. So any feeling, behavior, or thought can be transformed with this core transformation process. However, it can't be used to learn a new skill. You know, if you want to learn how to fly an airplane, obviously that's going to still take a lot of time and devotion to learning that new skill. However, often we have different things that block us or make it more difficult for us to learn. So if that's the case, that's a wonderful thing to use core transformation for. So for example, if I'm studying to be a pilot and I find that I'm procrastinating on my studies, that behavior of procrastination would be a perfect thing to use core transformation with. Or maybe I feel frustrated that there's just so much to learn, or I feel overwhelmed. Those are all things that would be wonderful candidates for this core transformation process. So here's a few examples of things that have been transformed with this process from my clients and other trainings that I've been a part of. There are loads of examples, so these are just a few to give a taste of some of the many things that have been transformed through this process. So I had a client who had intrusive thoughts that were coming in and critical and disrupting his experience, and it wasn't helpful for him in going through life, understandably. A lot of people, you know, I think this is something that we all struggle with at various points in our lives in one context or another. And core transformation was able to resolve that for him quite quickly. So that's an example of a thought pattern that was shifted. Another man in one of my core transformation trainings quit smoking through doing this core transformation process. So again, a behavior in this case that he was able to transform and stop that behavior through this process. I had another client who had intense fear and anxiety. She had actually, many would probably call it post-traumatic stress, although I'm not in the business of diagnosing as a coach. I don't do that, although that's a word that, you know, is in common usage now. People self-diagnose all the time with PTS. Anyways, it was many years after a robbery rape experience that was extremely traumatic. And so she had a very intense fear and anxiety, and this led to a lot of her having to organize her life in a lot of complicated ways to so that she could feel safe at night. And if those things weren't in place, then she wasn't going to feel safe, and it was a big issue. So through several sessions of core transformation, and those were pretty long sessions, she was able to resolve that and have an experience after many years of being able to sleep at night and feel comfortable and safe in her home, and also a reduction of the different places where the fear or anxiety used to surface in her life, even though this was, of course, many years after that incident. My uncle in sales, he had an experience many years ago where he felt like there was a conflict when he was making a sale because he didn't want to push some product on somebody that they didn't want. And yet, of course, his job was to sell products. And so he felt sort of okay, how do I navigate this? And he did core transformation with this issue. And after the process, he had an experience of, it was like, he's like, I could care less if I made a sale or not, was kind of the state that he was in after doing the process. And interestingly enough, the next year, he doubled his sales in one category and was Salesman of the Year in another category. And what he attributes that to is that he accessed a level of congruence about the products that he was representing that he felt really good about. And also this, from the state of like, he could care less about making the sale or not, it became not about him making the sale, it became more about him meeting a real need in the other customer. And not only for a single sale, but to actually meet a need in a long-term way where there was a kind of satisfaction that would have return customers coming back. That was his experience of it. There's even an example in the Core Transformation book about somebody who guided, their client was diagnosed schizophrenic, and they guided them through this process systematically. I forget if it was over a period of a month every day, but they guided this person through Core Transformation, taking a new aspect of their experience each time and just stuck with it for a period of time. And after that, he basically was able to lead a normal life again. The man was able to get married, have kids, hold a regular job. That basically he was able to come out of that diagnosis and that experience through really using Core Transformation as a practice for a period of time, which is quite incredible. This isn't to say that this will always work with that diagnosis. Of course, we couldn't promise something like that, but it's quite impressive that it worked even in this one example. And is a nice example also of how much more benefit we can get. Often there can be a real benefit, a very strong benefit in just one or a few sessions, but how much more benefit we can get by using this as a practice and longer term. And I think that goes for anyone, not just somebody who's diagnosed with schizophrenia, which I'll talk about a little bit more later in the benefits of using this process as a practice. And you can guide yourself through as a practice as well. Another client I had just said, you know, Core Transformation has changed my life. And Core Transformation is one of these processes where often, and this is one of the reasons that it's one of my go-to methods as well, is that often things that we don't expect to transform actually transform. So we might be working with a particular issue, like my frustration with my boss or something like that, and do a Core Transformation process, and suddenly discover that things are going better with my partner at home or with my kids or other things like that. And a lot of my clients have experienced that as well. They'll say something like, you know, my relationship with my brother improved significantly, and you know, I hadn't even talked about that or mentioned that. So it's a process that transforms at a deep level of experience that often has these ripple out effects and positive effects in other areas of our lives as well. So that's just an added bonus some of the time. So Core Transformation, the process has basically 4 key concepts to it. The first is this concept of parts. And you hear this in everyday language. You know, often somebody will say, well, a part of me really wants to buy that really nice new jacket, but a part of me wants to save the money. And you know, Or a part of me really wants to have that dessert, but on the other hand, I know that it's going to be, you know, I'm kind of watching my health and wanting to make the healthy choice. So often we have an experience of not being fully aligned or congruent when faced with a certain choice or within a certain context. It's like part of me wants to do this one thing, part of me wants to do this other thing. Or to give another example, if I'm, you know, a lot of clients, they come in to see me and they've of course been the ones to call me up or send me an email. So consciously they know that they have something that they want to change. And yet that conscious understanding hasn't been able to change it, or they wouldn't have been giving me a call. And so often we have this experience, everybody has experienced this, where we identify something consciously. Okay, I don't want to bite my nails, for example, or whatever it might be. And yet, you know, pretty soon, sure enough, we notice, oh, there I am, I'm doing it again. And so anytime we have this experience where consciously we want to change something, but something else is happening, we know that we need to work with the unconscious. And so that brings us to the second key element of the core transformation process, which is this idea of the unconscious mind. And that's basically this experience, is that, you know, our conscious mind is really good at running certain things, solving certain problems, but actually most of our experience is run unconsciously, automatically. And it's a really good thing that that is the case, because if we had to do everything consciously, we probably wouldn't be able to even get out of bed in the morning. We'd just be, okay, heartbeat, lungs, breathe, okay, you know, tracking all of the physiological kind of stuff. It would be too much. It wouldn't even be possible to do that consciously, much less get out of bed in the morning. So it's a really good thing that most of our experience does function effortlessly, automatically, outside of our conscious awareness or conscious control. And yet sometimes if we have something happening in our experience that's causing some trouble or that's challenging, that has some major downsides, then it can be really frustrating that it's happening so automatically and we're not able to just change it. So again, anytime we have an experience of consciously wanting to change something in our experience, and yet that's not enough to do it, we know we need to work with the unconscious mind. And this is a process that's able to access the unconscious, which we'll get into in a moment. The third concept is this idea of positive purpose or positive intent. And so that is that it's an assumption and it's a presupposition out of neurolinguistic programming that every feeling, behavior, and thought is motivated by some positive purpose, some positive intent. So we may not know what that is, but it's wanting something positive. And for those of you who go, well, you know, what about somebody who murders somebody, or what about terrorists, or, you know, those sorts of things? I would suggest, and you can consider this and explore this in your own experience with this process, that even in the most extreme cases, though whatever behavior somebody is exhibiting, whatever feeling they're having, whatever thought they're having, that it is motivated by wanting something positive. That part of them is wanting something positive. It may not be successful in getting it, but it's wanting it. And that's what I've seen, you know, guiding hundreds of people through this process, is that there's always a positive intent. And this process makes it really easy to access this positive intent. And not only is there a positive intent or positive purpose that's wanted by this unconscious part of us, but actually there are even deeper purposes that are wanted. And that's one of the key distinctions in core transformation. We really go to a deep level that many other processes don't go to or don't realize that that is actually there. So let me share a client example. This is an anonymous client example from recent, and there are many of these, to give you a sense of how the beginning of this process tends to play out. So for this person, her experience was that she wanted to work with, she had an experience of judging herself for not always being in a positive state. So if she wasn't feeling positive, not in a good mood, she'd notice herself, judging, being critical of herself for that. And so that inner judgment and criticism was bothering her. She wanted to transform that experience. So with core transformation, we discover, okay, so what is the feeling, behavior, or thought that is going to be most valuable to transform? And so for her, it was this, so I asked her, where, when, with whom do you have this? Close your eyes, step back into the experience. What's it like? I had her step back into a specific time when it happened so she could access the experience again. And because the experience, that's what we were working with in this process is the experience level, not the conscious mind analytical level. So she mentally stepped back into the experience, seeing through her eyes, feeling through her feelings, hearing through her ears. And I asked her, so what is the, what are you noticing? What is the thought that you want to change? And she said, oh, it's this thought, I should be feeling X. I should be feeling happy, or I should be feeling, bubbly, or, whatever it might have been. So then I asked her, okay, so close your eyes, and since you didn't consciously decide to have this thought, it just happened, we know that there's some unconscious part of you generating this. And just sense in your body or around you, where do you sense this part of you lives? And she said, it's kind of like it's happening in my neck, in the right side of the neck, kind of on the back side. So isn't that interesting? So we might assume that a thought always happens in the head, but when we actually checked her experience, it was as if it was back here. Or it may have actually been that she had the thought, but it was as if the part of her generating the thought was located a little bit down here. And so that's what we're wanting to access, because that is the part generating this behavior. That's where it's possible to have transformation. So I invited her to thank this part for being there, because again, we can trust that it has something positive that it wants to offer, or that it wants. Not necessarily to offer, it might be all for itself. That's fine too, just something positive that it wants. And this bit about thanking these parts is really important to gain rapport with our unconscious, because often we've spent a long time struggling, trying to get rid of this part, trying to wish it wasn't there, willpower past it. So taking the time to really thank this part for being here, because we can trust that it has something positive it wants, is really key to this process. Then I asked her, so when you thank this part, ask this part of you, what do you want? And then just relax, turn inward, notice the first response that comes back. And for her, the first response that came back, now these responses, they can come back, it may be an image, internal image, it might be a feeling, it might be a sound, sometimes it might be in a word. Often it's more in an experience that then the person will put into words to tell me about it. So the answer that she got back from this part was order. I want order. So I said, great, thank this part of you for this response. The nice thing about this is that consciously, as a guide, and even for the person that I'm guiding, we don't even necessarily need to know exactly what that means, because this part of the person knows what it means. So thank this part for this response of order, and invite this part of you to step or breathe into what it would be like to already have order just fully and completely the way you want. And just gave her some time, and I said, then when she nodded, I said, okay, so when you ask this part, when you have order, what is it this part want through having order that's even deeper still, even more core? And the answer that came back from her part was relief. So then, of course, we did the same thing, inviting this part of her to step into the experience of what it's like to already have relief fully, completely. And I could see her beginning to relax more, and asked, when you have relief, what is it you, this part, want through relief that's even deeper still? The answer that came back from this part was trust. Now, as a guide, I didn't even need to know exactly what kind of trust this was, whether it's trust of another person or inner trust, but I had just invited her to thank the part for this response and have this part of her step into the experience of trust that it wants, fully and completely. And then again, ask the same question. So the part, what it wanted through trust was a deep belief. And again, I didn't even need to ask what this meant, what sort of a belief this was, because the part knew what it was. And so I just invited her to invite this part of her to step into the experience of this deep belief, fully, completely. I just noticed when she nodded, when this part of her was experiencing it, and then asked her, what is it? I asked her to ask the part. So I said, ask this part of you, when you have this deep belief, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still? And the answer that came back was peace. Now, when we get an answer back such as peace, this is a kind of word that may be what we refer to as a core state. And a core state of being is something like peace, oneness, wholeness, beingness. It's a state of being that is possible to have whether things go the way we want in life or not, like regardless of what happens. So a core state is independent of what happens. It's not dependent on anything going a particular way in life. And it's a state of being that's possible to experience throughout life, so across different contexts. It's appropriate to have regardless of what's happening or not happening in life. So because I thought this may be a core state, I didn't want to assume that, so I asked her, okay, thank this part for this response, and ask this part, when you have peace, as all fully and completely the way you want, is there anything you, this part, want through peace that's even deeper still? And I could see that she was kind of checking inside, noticing what answer came back from this part of her. And she reported back, no, the part says this is the deepest. This is it. There's nothing deeper than this. So we know now that this is the core state for this part, because it is an experience that's possible to have across contexts in life. It's possible to have regardless of what happens or doesn't happen. And there's nothing deeper that the part wanted through peace that was even more important. So now that we've accessed this core state, the fun begins. And so what I told her is, we have some really good news for this part of you. Is, often our parts get the idea that in order to experience their core states, such as peace, often our parts think they need to first do certain things or get certain things. And that just doesn't usually work out very well, going about it that way. Usually our parts don't get to experience peace very often, going about it in that way. Sometimes they never get to experience their core states. They're still trying to figure out this stuff up here, like order, how to get order in life. And so the good news is that the best way to experience a core state is just to step in it and have it. So I guided her like this. I said, so invite this part of you to step or breathe into what it's like to already have peace, just fully, completely the way you want. Fully, completely, as an ongoing way of being. And ask this part of you, when you already have peace, how does already having peace in an ongoing way just make things different in life in general? And so I could see she closed her eyes and was just experiencing, allowing this part of her to experience. And she said something along the lines of it just, makes things so much easier. And so then the next part of the core transformation process is getting to invite the part into the experience of what it's like to already have this core state as a way of being to begin with, and how already having this just naturally transforms, enriches, or radiates through each of these other things that was important to the part. So I invited her, ask this part, when you have peace as a way of being, how does this radiate through, enrich, transform deep belief? And when I'm taking notes, guiding somebody, I just do this to keep track of things. So she closed her eyes and noticed, just, and I don't have all my notes here, so I don't remember exactly what she said, but it tends to be something along the lines of like, either it makes it that much easier, or it's like not even necessary anymore to have the belief because peace is already there. It's like the belief part sort of dissolves away and it isn't really even needed anymore. So I invited her to breathe in this experience, and then invited her, ask this part, when you have peace as a way of being, how does already having this radiate through, enrich, transform trust? And again, she just reported back, it makes it that much easier. It's like already there, already taken care of. Wonderful. So breathe in this experience and ask this part, when you have peace already as an ongoing way of being, how does already having this in an ongoing way radiate through, enrich, transform this whole area of relief? And she said, well, it's kind of like it's not needed anymore. It's like when there's already peace, I don't even need relief. So I invited her to breathe in this experience and asked her, asked her to ask this part. I said, ask this part, when you have peace, how does already having peace radiate through, enrich, transform order? And again, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was likely along the lines of, it makes it that much easier and or unnecessary. Like, things go easier, it's easier to actually bring things into order, those things that I have control over, and the things that I don't have control over, that are disordered or whatever, it's okay, because the peace is already there. So I invited her to breathe in this experience, and then we invite her to ask the part, how does already having peace as an ongoing way of being enrich, radiate through, transform the situations in which she used to have the thought, I should be feeling X. And I could tell she was kind of accessing the experience, taking some time to notice, and this part of her to notice. And she said, you know what? It's like, it's not there anymore. The judgment isn't there anymore. The criticism isn't there anymore. It's just my experience, and there's space, there's room for me to be in a good mood, yes, but also room for me to not be in a good mood if that's, what's happening that particular moment or that particular day. So great. So this is the first phase 1 and phase 2 of the core transformation process. There's also a phase 3 and a phase 4, which we don't have time to get into today, that's about giving an experience of, phase 3 is about giving an experience. Often these behavioral patterns are formed at a much younger developmental age than we are now. And it's almost as if that, like a part split off and was just functioning at that, in the best way that it knew how, at the age of 2 or 5 or 7 or whatever it was, and didn't actually ever get the opportunity to update its knowledge and learning since that time. So phase 3 is a really important step that allows an evolution forward through time and integration of these parts. And phase 4 is a way of working with when there's multiple parts involved all around an issue. Because sometimes we might have multiple things going on. There's the part of me that feels frustrated, and then there's the part of me that judges me for not already feeling better. or feeling differently. So there we already know there's actually two parts that are going to be really important to work with. And one of the reasons that core transformation gets such good results with a wide range of issues, and often with issues that people haven't gotten results with other methods, is because it gives a very seamless way of addressing and including all of these other parts that otherwise might object and interfere to a change actually taking hold and being a long-term change for somebody. And you know, it's a good thing that those parts are there because they have something important to offer too. And if they didn't come up and interrupt the change, likely we'd get some sort of a change that would have some other negative downside that we didn't realize or didn't think through. So it gives a really, core transformation phase 4 gives a way of working with all of these different parts so that we work in a really complete and holistic way that's not going to inadvertently create some sort of a downside that we didn't realize or didn't think through. So I'd like to guide you all through a brief, because this is really where the transformation happens, is through experience. So I'd like to guide you all through a brief self-guided experience of the beginning, for phase 1 of this process, so you can begin to have a sense of it. So I'd invite you to begin by closing your eyes and just choose some situation where, some mild situation, some feeling, behavior, or thought that you would like to transform. So this could be frustration in traffic, or it could be something that annoys you from a friend or partner, but doesn't really cause any real harm, but something that you find annoying or frustrating, something on the mild end of the spectrum for this exercise. And I invite you to close your eyes and get comfortable. Change happens in the body, so it's good to be seated or standing or lying down or whatever is a comfortable place and comfortable position for you. Close your eyes and take a moment to just think of a specific time where some mild feeling, behavior, thought happened that you'd like to change. Some response that you'd like to change. And mentally, just once you've chosen a specific behavior, feeling, or thought, just think about the different times or places where this occurs. So if it's frustration in traffic, the feeling of frustration, think about the different times and places where that occurs in traffic, and maybe it occurs in other times where you're not in traffic. And then choose a specific example that's a good, strong example of when this response occurred. And mentally step back into the situation so you're back in it as it was when it happened, seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, feeling what you felt at the time. And you can also be aware of any internal images, sounds, feelings as you relive this experience. Now, since you didn't consciously decide to have this response, we know that some unconscious part of you generated this. So you can just sense in your body or around you, where do you sense this part lives? You just notice the first thing that comes in your experience. Some of you will notice something right away. Others of you, feel free to just guess if something doesn't come. For the purposes of this introduction, that's totally fine to just guess. And others of you, you might notice, like maybe it's a sensation of anxiety you're working with. You might notice, if you're not sure where the part is, just sense, where is this anxiety generated from? Notice this location. Take this as the location of the part. And you may like to put your hand over the place where you sense this unconscious part of you, whether it's in your body or outside in the space around you somewhere. And begin by thanking this part for being here. because you can trust that even if you have no idea what its positive intention is, you can trust this part of you has some positive intention, something positive it wants. And once you've thanked this part for being here, you can ask this part, what do you want? And then just relax, turn inward, notice the first response that comes back. So it may be a feeling, a sound, image. Just notice the first response back from this part of you. Many of you will get an answer right away in some feelings, image, response. If you don't, you can just gently ask the question again, or feel free to just make it up and go with that for this introduction. And for those of you who get some response, you can thank the part for this response and invite the part to stop or breathe into what it's like to already have this that it wants, fully and completely, whatever it is. And ask this part, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? And again, just notice the first response that comes back from this part of you. It's wanted at an even deeper level. And for those who get an answer, you can thank this part for this response and invite it to stop, breathe into what it's like to have this deeper experience that it wants, fully and completely. And ask this part, now when you have this deeper experience that you want, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, that's even more core? And again, just notice whatever response comes back from this part of you. Often there's an experience of it just sort of blossoming from the last thing that was wanted. And there it is. And you can thank the part and invite it to step or breathe into this deeper experience of what it's wanting. What it's like to already have this fully, completely the way it wants. And ask this part, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? Noticing whatever responses come and thanking the part for these responses and inviting it to step into having these deeper experiences fully and noticing what's wanted through this that's even deeper still. So I'll just give a few moments for you to continue at your own pace. And some of you may have already accessed the core state experience. The part goes, there's nothing deeper. Maybe it's a state of beingness, oneness, peace, kind of love that just is. It may not even have a word. For others of you, there may be still something deeper that the part shares and steps into and experiences something even deeper that it's wanting through that. So for those of you who have already accessed a core state, you can just invite this part of you to bask in this state of being. For those of you who are still going deeper, you can go deeper at your own pace. For another minute or two, and go as far as, and however far, however deep you go in this introduction will be a beginning and a wonderful place, a wonderful experience to begin with. Whether or not this part gets to a core state yet, just in this short introduction. So you can open your eyes and enjoy whatever experience you're enjoying in the moment. And of course, if we were to do a full session, then we would go all the way to the core state and reversing the outcome, bringing the core state back through each of those things that was wanted. And of course, on to phase 3 and 4, which we teach about in the full training. So any questions about this this introduction? I'm going to just open it up, and anyone can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask any questions that you have, or if you want to begin by just sharing any of your experience of that brief introduction guiding experience, that's perfectly welcome as well.
I just super appreciate it. I notice a lot of the times, this is like the third time I went into the first 2 parts, and I always end up with inner peace. It's interesting to me that that's my highest,
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions about the process in general? And that's fine if there aren't any. It's a pleasure to share this this introduction with you. And something, maybe I'll just share a little bit of the backstory or the history, since I didn't mention that up front, which is that, so this process was developed by my mother, Connirae Andreas, and she so she was in the NLP world doing a lot of NLP trainings, and part of her inspiration in developing this process was to create, was basically that she had some issues that she considered really significant issues that she hadn't been able to resolve to her satisfaction yet. She'd gotten a lot of benefits from the other NLP processes, and saw, lots of her clients were getting great benefits from those as well. And yet there were some major issues that she wasn't able to resolve with the methods that she knew of at that time. And so what she did was she invited people to come to her who had not gotten results, who had tried a lot of different methods and hadn't yet gotten results with what they wanted transformation with. And she kind of jokingly said, what I promise is we won't do anything that I know, and you can leave when we have the result that you want. Of course, she probably would have let them leave regardless, but that was how it began. And so she kind of explored some things. She figured it would probably be easier to come up with something that could help other people before she attempted to find something that could help her. She considered herself to be a tough client. So that was the beginning of her developing and discovering the core transformation process, is that she would work with somebody and get a result, and great, wonderful. And then, she'd work with somebody else and then get a great result, work with somebody else. Wait, we didn't get the result yet. So, okay, what else can we add into this so it'll work for this person as well? And okay, great. So we bring in the growing up the part, and now this person gets the result, and doing it with a few more people. And now, okay, here's another person who doesn't get the result. So what can we add in again to make this a really complete and thorough process that will get the result, even for these people who have tried lots of different things without being able to transform their issues. And so then once the process was getting some really great results with these folks who are working with these big issues that hadn't been resolved by anything else, then she applied it to herself and began to get the results for herself that she was wanting. So with that, I think, oh, and I'll just share a little bit about my own experience too, is that this is a kind of process that I alluded to this earlier, that, you know, it can be a wonderful thing to come to a training and have a really transformational experience. It's amazing what can actually happen just in like 2 or 3 days of training, even in 1 day of training, or in like 1 or 2 sessions. And this is a process that is really user-friendly. So it's one of the, even though it is working at a very deep level and it's a very comprehensive and complete process, it's also really user-friendly. And it's one of the best processes that I know to apply to yourself and to use actually as an ongoing practice. And so that's always my goal in teaching the trainings and my client work, is that anyone who's interested gets equipped to be able to guide yourself through this process as a practice. And it can even become a daily practice. I did this recently and got just wonderful results from doing this, just like 10 to 15 minutes. I probably did about 10 minutes a day for about a month recently. So just wanted to say that as well. So it has a lot of potential beyond the training as well, to integrate into your life. And that's always what I hope you'll be able to do to get even more benefits from this process and this way of working. So thank you very much, and I hope you join in and discover more.
Thank you.
Great, you're welcome.